Today we wanted to take a few minutes to share some information about the current challenges facing the Norristown Area School District. As you can see, there are three main topics that we'd like to review. We'd like to start with providing some background information, talk about the property tax elimination plan, and then ask for your help through a call for action to our state representatives. Here, we're going to start with some background information. On this slide, we have identified the four major challenges being faced by all public school districts in Pennsylvania. Certainly, the Norristown Area School District has challenges over and above these. However, these are the four main challenges that are being faced as we move forward for the 17-18 school year by all public school districts in Pennsylvania. They include inadequate state funding, rising charter school tuition, unfunded or underfunded mandates, and then we have been having this ongoing PSERS state retirement crisis. As a result of these challenges, property taxes in Pennsylvania are the primary source of funding for public education. And we all know property taxes in Pennsylvania are very high. Starting with looking at the retirement system crisis. Here you can see some background information about the Pennsylvania Public School Employees Retirement System. The unfunded liability of PSERS has been growing each year. And while the screen that the liability exceeds $30 billion, recent reports have this actually projected to be closer to $50 billion. This chart illustrates the employer contribution rates paid by the Norristown Area School District. These are required contributions paid each year, which are mandated by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which means they must be paid. Please note the significant growth in these rates. As you can see, they jumped from 3.77% to over 30%. As a result of that jump, our retirement expenses for the 17-18 school year will exceed $21 million, which is 14% of our total spending and twice as much as we will spend on the health care for our employees. The second challenge involves unfunded or underfunded mandates. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of mandates that public school districts in Pennsylvania must comply with each year. These mandates are imposed by the federal and/or state government, but in most cases, these mandates do not come with any funding for implementation. Federal and state agencies require local school districts to pay for the cost of the mandates. Here you can see just a snapshot of the state and federal mandates that we are required to operate under and comply with each year. We want to highlight the cost implications of several of the mandates, just so you can get an idea of the costs involved and the burden placed on our local community. We're going to start with the special education program mandates. These are underfunded by $26 million. Again, the federal and state government require the local school district to comply with mandates in the area of special education, yet do not provide adequate funding. And as a result, the local community must fund about $26 million each year. Moving forward to the transportation mandates, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania requires public school districts to provide transportation beyond just the traditional public school setting. We're required to also provide transportation to non-public and charter schools. The mandate again comes from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and while some funding to that mandate, this mandate is underfunded by the tune of about $7 million. So that means taxpayers must pay that $7 million price tag to comply with the mandate for transportation. Rules governing student transportation require us to provide transportation to over 100 schools every day, and they include schools that are up to 10 miles outside of our boundaries. Moving forward to charter schools, in Pennsylvania, charter schools are essentially offering privatized public education. In the 2015-2016 school year, the Norristown Area School District spent nearly $7.5 million in charter school tuition. Charter schools are a complex issue in Pennsylvania. Charter schools are not required to comply with all the same mandates that traditional public schools must comply with. And charter schools are allowed to operate as for-profit organizations in Pennsylvania. Most states do not allow charter schools to operate as a for-profit entity, but Pennsylvania currently does permit this. Please note the tuition rates as shown on the screen. We are required to pay these rates as outlined in the charter school law. As you can see, we are currently paying about $14,000 for each regular education student attending a charter school and about $30,000 for each special education student attending a charter school. These rates are the same whether that charter school is a brick and mortar or a cyber charter school, and the special education rates are not dependent on the level of service being provided. We believe that the tuition formula in the law is flawed, and we also advocate that comprehensive charter school reform is needed. The fourth challenge that is faced by every Pennsylvania public school district is just a lack of adequate state funding. Here, the pie chart illustrates a snapshot of where our district gets its money. You can see that 24% of the cost of education, 24% of our revenue comes from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. 5% comes out of Washington or the federal government. That leaves 71% of the financial support for public school to come out of the local community. So again, you can just see, as demonstrated in the pie chart, that this formula and this lack of financial support from the federal and state government creates an over-reliance on property taxes to fund public education. Again, we started off our presentation by acknowledging that property taxes are very high. We also believe that property tax reform is long overdue. But the plan that is being discussed in Harrisburg right now, we just don't think that's an appropriate solution. We included this slide so that you could see the levels of financial support provided by states to public education across our country. As you can see in dark green, there are 22 states that provide more than 50% of the funding needed for public education. Unfortunately, Pennsylvania is just not one of those states, but we certainly need it to be. Today we want to take a few more minutes to share some information about legislation that is expected to be introduced in Harrisburg. The Property Tax Elimination Bill, also called the Property Tax Independence Act, is expected to be introduced shortly. Ironically though, as you will see on the screen, this bill does not actually eliminate property tax. It will eliminate part of your school property tax bill, but not the entire bill, and it will not eliminate your county and municipal property tax bill. It will, however, increase other taxes. We expect that this bill will include a provision to increase personal income tax from 3.07% to 4.95%, and we expect that it will include a provision to increase sales tax from 6% to 7%, with more items, including food and clothing, being subject to a 7% sales tax rate. We also expect this legislation to include a provision that will require voters to approve any future debt of school districts for capital projects. And as you can see, this legislation does not provide any new funding to public school districts. It's simply a tax shift. We believe that more funding is needed and believe that any funding from Harrisburg should flow to public school districts through the needs-based that was established by the Basic Education Funding Commission in 2015. The use of this needs-based formula is extremely important to our district because it would recognize the challenges that we have with additional funds. This slide highlights the winners and losers under the property tax elimination plan as proposed. Winners include retirees and senior citizens, businesses that own properties, and landlords. Losers would include renters. We've got many people who are renters in the Norristown Area School District. They do not have a property tax bill to be eliminated, so they're simply going to be paying the higher income and sales tax rates. We also are concerned about some of our residents. The expansion of sales tax to include food and clothing could be very challenging for them as well. As you can see, the bottom red bullet, the biggest loser under this plan is public school districts. This slide highlights some of the expected impacts to public school districts under the tax elimination plan. The first includes cash flow challenges. Currently, we receive daily and/or weekly payments from our local tax collectors. This bill would require the school district instead to receive quarterly payments from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So from day one, we would have a change in our cash flow, and honestly, we expect challenges to result. The second impact is the disparity of funding would be locked in. So by simply replacing our tax revenue with different tax revenue, it does nothing to address our current challenges. School districts that are more affluent will remain more affluent, and school districts that struggle will continue to struggle. There's an old saying in Pennsylvania that the quality of your education is dependent upon your zip code, and unfortunately, this bill does nothing to address or to fix that challenge. The third includes the loss of local control. This legislation attempts to eliminate local control. The school board would no longer have the authority to levy taxes and/or to respond to the needs of our students and residents. And then the fourth expected impact is that program cuts would just simply be inevitable. With no new funds, no authority to raise taxes, honestly, we're going to struggle to figure out how to balance our budget each year. So as a result of some of the things that we were talking about and some of the activity that's going on in Harrisburg, honestly, we're looking for a call for action. Here you can see what we believe is needed. We believe that school districts all across the Commonwealth, particularly Norristown, we need an investment in public education. We just don't need a shift. And we argue that if property tax reform is important, we would like to see any increases in personal income and sales tax distributed again through that needs-based formula. And if there's going to be property tax reform enacted, we hope that it would include some preservation of the local role of our school board. We also recognize the need for pension reform, for mandate relief, and/or funding for mandates, and again, comprehensive charter school reform. This slide includes the names and contact information for our state representatives. We hope that you will reach out to them and advocate on behalf of our students, our families, and our residents. We thank you for your time today. We are continuing to work on the development of our 2017-18 school year budget. Our budget must be adopted by June 30th, 2017. We provide updates very frequently on the Norristown Area School District website. We encourage you to take a few minutes each month to look for an update. Our website is www.nasd.k12.pa.us. Thank you.